Tonight, they accessed more than a dozen government and community agencies, but they were still on the brink of homelessness for months. We have one couple's story. Also, hundreds of people rally in Saskatoon against new sexual education and pronoun policies in Saskatchewan schools. Plus, a 9-year-old Swift Current TikTok sensation finally gets her life-saving organ transplant.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Monday, August 28th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. A Regina couple spent 5 months on the brink of homelessness, despite using more than a dozen community and government resources. Their story is an example of the complexities of finding a place to live and how things can change overnight when a community comes together. Laura Sharpaletti has more.
Clint Soto and Marie Robinson never imagined they'd be living here. Their struggle to find housing began early this year, just months after Robinson's mother contracted COVID-19 at a hospital and died.
It was really traumatic for us, and especially for Marie. She was devastated.
Robinson relapsed into drug use. Child and Family Services banned her from the house shared by the couple and their 5 children, even when she was sober.
Because she's not from here, and it was in wintertime, and she has no family here, and you know, it just, I wasn't going to let her suffer out in the streets.
Soto says he let Robinson back into the house when she was not using drugs, but their children were apprehended. They lost benefits, their income assistance was reduced, and Soto couldn't leave Robinson's side to work. Unable to afford rent and bills, the couple eventually got evicted. They tried to rent 1-bedroom apartments, but didn't have any references.
I couldn't explain all of our circumstances in the application forms. When we go in person, we'd have a better chance, except that they would look at Marie, who was not fully herself yet.
While living in a motel, the couple say they tapped every resource available to pay the rent, including their reservations and Jordan's Principle, which focuses on getting First Nations children and their families the help they need. Soto also takes Robinson to meetings every day. They also attend addictions, ceremony, and counseling sessions. In fact, they've used and applied for over a dozen community and government resources.
I was shocked and dismayed at how much work they were putting in and how little traction they were getting in that.
Soto and Robinson have come close to getting a home a few times, but they continued to face barriers. Most recently, a landlord accepted them after hearing positive references, but they couldn't move in until they paid over $1,000 to Sask Power. Over the weekend, Rally Around Homelessness was able to raise the money through donations, including from Regina's Sikh and queer communities.
When the systems aren't working, I think it's just a natural thing that people would want to work it out together.
You know, the thing about living on the margins is that there's a lot of opportunities to have your faith restored in humanity through the goodness of others, and we've experienced that.
Yeah, and that's just being honest, right?
Yeah.
And telling your story.
The couple says they're grateful. Robinson recently passed 1 month of sobriety. She and Soto moved into their new home today, one step closer to reuniting their family and healing together. Laura Sharpaletti, CBC News, Regina.
A clearer picture of homelessness in Saskatoon is slowly emerging and a possible way forward. As Dan Zakreski reports, the mayor says community leaders are now starting to talk about the same solution.
We now know where homeless people set up their makeshift shelters, in 44 neighborhoods across the city. We know where people go when they're looking for help. This wellness center has been at capacity since it opened 18 months ago. And we know at least some of the costs associated with helping them.
You're okay?
The fire department has spent more than $300,000 since 2021, mapping where they stay and helping them get off the street. It's the people who don't want help that are the issue. Homeless people with addictions and mental health issues. According to police, there's almost 80 people who they arrest over and over and over again. So, what to do?
Everybody's saying the same thing. The tribal chief, spoke about it. We're hearing from community-based organizations that's a big need. So we need to have facilities. We need to have at least 100 beds for complex needs individuals.
These so-called stabilization beds offer supports for complex needs individuals, the people with addiction and mental health problems. Right now, there is no such place in this city for them.
Carry yourself to your bins.
Tribal Chief Mark Arcand says the Emergency Wellness Center is not equipped to deal with people who have complex needs.
We need facilities for complex needs. It's a priority.
Off-site?
Off-site. It has to be somewhere different. And we need that as soon as possible.
Clark says agreeing on a way forward is only part of it.
It's very difficult for any neighborhood or any area to welcome them in, and there aren't any readily available sort of sites that just jump out as the perfect site. So we're going to work and figure that out.
Clark says the city needs help from the province and Ottawa to help with the costs of building and running a facility. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Hundreds of people rallied in Saskatoon yesterday, protesting new school policies around sex education and pronoun use. It was the latest in a wave of opposition to the policies Education Minister Dustin Duncan announced last week. Protesters rallied outside MLA Don Morgan's office to share their concerns. Schools are now required to get parental consent before changing a student's pronouns and preferred name in class, if the child's under 16. Parents must also be informed about sex ed curriculum and have the option to opt out. And only teachers will be allowed to conduct sexual education in classrooms. Duncan says the policies give parents more involvement in their children's schooling, but some parents disagree.
Stop this. It's not in the interest of saving children or making children safe. What you are doing is harming children. You are putting youth and children in harm's way.
We know the kids do better when parents are involved. The fact is that these policies are forcing schools and teachers into a position that can put children at risk.
Premier Scott Moe took to social media yesterday to defend the policies. Moe's been touring the province and says he's only heard positive feedback. Premier Moe is also pointing to a recent survey that he says backs his government's decision to make those changes in schools. The survey was conducted in July before the policy was announced, with results released today. The Angus Reid Institute asked more than 3,000 adults across Canada if parents should be informed about name and pronoun changes. 43% of people responded that parents should be informed and that schools should require consent. 35% thought parents should know, but that consent should not be required. 14% believe parents do not need to be informed and their consent should not be required. The sample in Saskatchewan was 255 people. Of those 255 people, 50% of them supported parents being informed and requiring parental permission for a change. That's the highest of any province.
There's a real division on whether or not the consent is necessary, and I think that's the line that we're seeing, and is really interesting for perhaps less popular governments to consider if they're going to implement a policy like this. There are a lot of places in the country where this would not go over as well, it appears, as it is in Saskatchewan.
Premier Moe posted the poll results on social media. Last week, opposition leader Carla Beck said her party did not, quote, support outing kids. It's a big day for new students at the University of Regina. About 400 of them started piling into dorms today, with more than 1,100 expected to live on campus this fall. The university says that's a 30% jump from last year, putting the U of R back to pre-pandemic levels, and housing is at a premium. To deal with that issue, the federal government has mused about a potential cap on international students. Two students we spoke to had mixed reaction.
They should probably give priority of residence to people who were born here. And also any international student can come like another year or maybe to another country. So I think that's fair.
I think it's a little bit unfair with all those people that have traveled a lot, a long ride to come here searching for a better life.
The president of the U of R says he's not worried about the feds limiting international admissions. Jeff Keshin says Regina's in a different position than bigger cities like Toronto. He says Regina has hundreds of vacant dorms available. A little girl from Swift Current had one of her dreams come true a week and a half ago. After 3 years on the transplant list, Bella Thompson received life-saving surgery at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. It's a journey that millions of people have been following on TikTok, and one her family hopes will inspire more people to become stem cell and organ donors. These are the first steps that Bella Thompson has taken on her own since life-saving surgery.
Good job!
Good job, Bella.
Yay!
Is this like when I took my first steps when I was only smaller?
The tiny TikTok star received an organ transplant about a week and a half ago in Toronto. Bella was born with 3 rare conditions: no immune system, dwarfism, and long segment Hirschsprung disease, which affected her entire bowel and caused it to eventually fail. In 2020, she was added to the transplant list. So when they got the call at home in Swift Current, they weren't expecting it.
It felt like a million years happening in like 20 seconds in my mind, going through all these scenarios of what our nurse is going to say next. And then she said, "We have a donor for Bella." And I was just in that moment really speechless.
A quick trip to Toronto, 11 hours after surgery started, and 1 full bowel transplant later, Kyla was able to see Bella.
It'll lead to her not needing permanent IVs anymore. She'll eventually not have an ostomy anymore. And she won't obviously have pain.
Bella's life-saving surgery was made possible by a pediatric organ donation.
Organ donation isn't as simple as signing a card. For little ones, it means their caregiver allows it. And I hope that we can thank them in person someday, and just tell them what that decision did for us.
With more than 6.2 million TikTok followers, Kyla and Bella try to bring lighthearted awareness to organ donation. The transplant recovery journey is going relatively smoothly for Bella.
I'm starting to get a kick back into sandwiches.
And her organs are showing no sign of rejection. But because of the lack of pediatric gastroenterologists in Saskatchewan, Bella will spend several months in Toronto with her team.
This has saved our daughter's life. We don't have to look at a scary future for her anymore. We can look at a bright one.
Bella has some advice for other kids who might be waiting like she did.
Have lots of fun and stay brave.
Wildfire smoke from northern Canada has turned skies hazy in much of Saskatchewan today. Environment Canada's Air Quality Health Index looks at the health risk, with a 10 being at the top of the scale. This is how Saskatoon looked earlier today when the air quality was at a 9. As of now, it's dropped to a 5, but Regina is at a 10 plus. When will it get better? Ethan will have more on the smoke in his forecast after the break. Stay with us. Ice cream is a classic summertime treat, and a popular shop in Winnipeg is taking it in a new direction. The owners are serving up a new plant-based version based on an ancient ingredient. Cameron McIntosh has the story.
His ice cream shop is already a Winnipeg institution. Now Justin Jacob is hoping to go a little bigger.
We kind of identified that a lot of people were trying to get non-dairy ice cream.
None of the dairy-free alternatives he found could really match his desired texture or taste, until he partnered with the University of Manitoba to help develop an experimental formula.
This is just like the liquid Lupine mix that we pour into the top of the hopper.
The key ingredient? Lupine beans.
From that, we were able to create a milk and then create a kind of a soft serve base out of that.
Lupine is a pulse crop native to the Mediterranean, now starting to be grown and processed in North America. High in protein and fat, being developed and marketed as a dairy alternative.
What we're working on here is the creation of new ingredients that can replace dairy.
When it comes to ice cream, the formula was developed here at the University of Manitoba, where John Thorosky has been experimenting with dairy-free ice cream.
The Lupine was basically outstanding it was better than most of the other stuff that we had tried. In terms of texture,
Initial reviews are positive.
It's delicious. It tastes a little bit nutty. Really, the texture is super smooth, a little bit thicker than the typical soft serve ice cream.
Jacob is experimenting with flavors, also hoping to develop a hard ice cream alternative.
We can get it to, even something that's like wholesale that we can give to other mom and pop ice cream shops like ours to serve as a non-dairy product, then that would be excellent.
Right now, it's one cone at a time. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
This weather update is brought to you by Crestview Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, proud member of the Capital Automotive Group.
And our weather specialist, Ethan Williams, joins me now. I wonder if ice lupin is the antidote for itchy eyes from all the smoke.
Yeah, right. I think a lot of people probably going to grab some ice cream just because it's been so hot today. But yeah, it's been smoky on top of that as well. And we're seeing something today that doesn't usually happen in our province, and that is from border to border, border to border, we are seeing air quality statements. Not a region without one today. Also have a heat warning in place for the La Loche area as well, but that area also under an air quality statement. You heard earlier about the levels of where those are at right now. We're still at a 10 plus in the Regina area on a scale that goes to 10. Same in Buffalo Narrows. We've come down a bit in places like Saskatoon and Prince Albert. Earlier today, we were up in that higher rating, and getting into the moderate rating in southern Saskatchewan and places like Swift Current and Estevan as well. That smoke being brought down by northwesterly winds that have been gusting a little breezy at times. And as I mentioned, outside of the smoke, we're talking about 30-degree temperatures, some nearly 10 degrees above seasonal for this time of year in parts of our province as well. Now, the good news is over the next couple of days here, wind's going to start to shift direction. We have this area of high pressure here, and the flow of the wind around that is kind of in a clockwise motion. So the winds are going to start to shift from the south. High pressure also keeping us clear. Not a lot of activity really happening on our outlook here until we get into Wednesday, Thursday. There is a developing area of low pressure in southeastern Alberta that could bring some showers and thunderstorms our way then. But otherwise, not a lot expected in terms of active weather. And those winds will be a bit breezy at times. A bit breezy in southwestern Saskatchewan tomorrow, then really all of southern Saskatchewan. Looking at those winds possibly in the 50-plus range. Again, kind of coming from the southeast, so hopefully some clearer air starting to move then. Until then, we can expect smoke, especially in eastern sections of south and central, come tomorrow as that begins to shift eastward. All of the north likely going to continue to contend with that over these next few days here, and the north likely seeing those advisories stay in place. Now, our upper atmosphere pattern shows that we have this ridge still in place over the province as we get to tomorrow. But again, come Thursday, that pattern starts to break down a little bit. The jet stream dropping to our south, some of the cooler air to the north of it going to start to move in. But it won't last long because, as you'll see here in our extended forecast, after that one-day blip, those temperatures are back close to 30 degrees as we start September. And outside of that, again, a little active weather possible Wednesday, Thursday, but really nothing too significant at this point. Some winds again picking up, especially on Wednesday. For Saskatoon, looking for temperatures that probably a little less smoky tomorrow for you than in Regina. But again, temperatures near 30, humidex value could make that feel into the mid-30s before temperatures drop. And then, of course, we start to see them kind of rise again, riding a bit of a roller coaster here in terms of temperatures. But overall, Sam, as we start the month of September, definitely going to be a hot note.
Thanks, Ethan.
You're welcome.
If you build it, they will come, or so they say. Thousands of Lego-loving Maritimers connected this weekend in Halifax for the first ever Bricksplosion event. The showcase featured the brickwork of 30 different local builders. 100 tables were set up throughout the hall, showcasing landmarks, vehicles, movie scenes, and many original designs. We'll be back after the break.
When it comes to your news, you want up-to-the-minute access. Anytime, anywhere. Get the facts straight from the source. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca for news you can trust. A
mass shooting in Florida over the weekend is being labeled a racially motivated crime. 3 black people were killed after a white gunman opened fire at a store on Saturday. He then killed himself. Sarah Levitt has the latest.
Investigators say they discovered writings by the 21-year-old shooter where he explicitly described his hatred of black people, and one of the guns he was carrying, a rifle, had swastikas on it. The 3 victims were killed near Edward Waters University. It's a small, historically black university. And in fact, we're hearing that the shooter tried to go there first, but left after being confronted by a security guard. The guns he used also were obtained legally. He used a handgun and an AR-15 rifle. He did a background check for them, and they were indeed obtained legally. We do know he was taken in for an involuntary exam due to a mental health crisis in 2017, but that didn't disqualify him from buying the guns.
There's no question about it. He hated blacks, and I think he hated just about everyone that wasn't white. He made that very clear. I want to make sure people understand that he is completely accountable. He understood what he was doing.
All this happening at a time of an important anniversary. 60 years ago today, Martin Luther King Jr. on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial giving his iconic "I Have a Dream" speech. One of the things that he said in that speech is, "Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice." And for him, the important word there is the now. He stressed the immediacy of getting to racial justice.
The same day when you had almost 200,000 Americans standing together for the best of who we are in humanity, we also saw the worst of who we are in humanity. We saw the manifestation of love and the manifestation of hate.
So for that Jacksonville shooting, the Justice Department has announced it is investigating to see if a hate crime was indeed committed. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Washington.
And Ethan's back with one last look at your weather.
And still going to be smoky tomorrow morning in Regina and southern Saskatchewan. Sam, looking at those the smoky conditions sticking around, likely that air quality health index increased as well. Otherwise sunny though, 18 degrees. We warm up very quickly by the noon hour, and likely at times that local smoke still going to be sticking around, likely feeling a little bit closer to 30 with just a bit of humidity. Saskatoon, we're looking at 17 tomorrow morning, and again we're starting off on a bit of a hazy note, and then as we go through that the afternoon, we should start to see the smoke dissipate a little bit for you. Those winds again shifting from the southeast as opposed to the northwest, where all those forest fires are and where all the smoke is. Now, of course, the smoke making for some great pictures. This from Corey Jade near Rosturn last night before all the heavy smoke started moving in. And Sam, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of sunsets like this in our future.
I bet our social media will be full of it.
Yes, send your photos.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
You bet.
And before we go tonight, it must have felt like forever.
For the first time in forever, the Edmonton Elks win at home.
The Edmonton Elks have finally snapped a 22-game home losing streak. They beat Ottawa 30-20 yesterday. The losing streak goes back to October of 2019, and it's Edmonton's first win at Commonwealth since becoming the Elks. Meanwhile, the Riders will be back after the bye week tomorrow, getting ready to host the 58th annual Labor Day Classic against Winnipeg. That is it for us tonight. For News Anytime, you can head to our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, or download the CBC News app. Ethan and I will be back with more tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.